Welcome to 242. We are so glad you are here. If this is your first time ever at 242, let me introduce myself. My name is Brad. I'm one of the teaching pastors here. And we're in the middle of this series called The Nine. And what this series is about, it's about what we're about. This series is what we're trying to accomplish as a church. A lot of people are new to 242. You've come here in the last year, and you're just like, I don't know, what are these guys really about? What is this church really about? And so what we wanted to do is take about 3 weeks or so and just let you guys know our hearts, our vision, what we feel like God is calling us to do, and where God is challenging us all to go. And so that's what this whole series is about. And we've been using this illustration of a slinky because it's so perfect. I mean, what we do as a church is all about helping people take next steps with God. So slinkies are most fun when they're taking next steps. They're actually pretty useless when they're not taking next steps. And so we want to challenge people to always be taking next steps. The other thing I was interesting to me about a slinky is, how many people here had a slinky growing up? You had a slinky, that's like everybody. It's like everybody. Now let me ask you this. How many people here ever bought another slinky? Yeah, like 5 people. Like, who buys slinkies, right? It just showed up one day. Like, it just showed up and you're like, oh, I have a slinky now, right? And then you play with it and it got twisted up and you never could get them untwisted once it gets twisted. And you're like, well, now I'll never have a slinky again. And then when you grow up, maybe you get married, have kids, you're like, my kid needs a slinky. Do you know where to find a slinky? Like, what aisle they're even in? Like, you have to go hunting for them now. And then you get them. But the thing is, at some point in time, when you're playing with a slinky, you're just like, this really isn't for me anymore. Like, I've seen what it could do. It goes down steps. That's not that awesome, right? And we kind of just chuck it to the side and forget about it. And I wonder if that's not where a lot of people are with their spiritual life. I wonder if that's not where a lot of people are when it comes to this whole church thing, when it comes to this whole God thing. I wonder if they get to a point where they're just like, you know what, it's not doing it for me anymore. I go to services every week, and it's just not doing it for me anymore. I mean, going to church and sitting through a worship service, it's like watching an episode on TV of something that somebody else wanted to watch. I mean, I'll sit through it just to make them happy, but I don't care. Or maybe like small groups. Like, my small groups aren't doing it for me anymore. I don't just go into somebody's house and just sit around. If I hear one more person tell about how they're feeling, how they feel, it's just not doing it for me anymore. I'm not getting anything out of it. Or contributing, serving on a team, giving tithes, offering, these kinds of things. You're just like, it's not doing it for me anymore. I mean, when I started serving, it was awesome. And people, I was important, but it's just, they don't care if I'm there, and it doesn't matter anymore. Because here's the thing. We're talking about this idea of growing spiritually. And Dave was here last week. He did an awesome job. He wrote out on the whiteboard the 9. What we're about as a church, and we have it kind of in columns, how we see spiritual growth happening through celebration, connecting, contributing, and what our next steps are. And here's what I know to be true. If we never go to the second column, if we personally are never ready, willing to take another step, then you're going to hit that wall and you're just going to go, this isn't for me anymore. And here's the truth. If you've been around Christianity for any amount of time, you've probably been there before. If you're new to church, if you're new to coming to God and something, here's the bad news. You're going to get there one day. And some of you in this room, you're there right now. You're sitting there and you're like, the whole church thing is just, I'm not feeling it. So here's the question I want to answer today. What do we do when we're being honest, we're just not feeling it? In the Bible, Jesus gives us an illustration, and he talks about this very thing. And he uses this phrase that, as I read it, haunted me for months afterwards. You can read it in Luke chapter 12. We'll put it on the screen if you don't have a Bible with you. It says this: the ground of a certain rich man yielded abundant harvests. And he thought to himself, well, what should I do? I have no place to store my crops. And then he says, this is what I'll do. I'll tear down my barns and I'll build bigger ones. And there I will store my surplus of grains. And I'll also say to myself, you have plenty of grain laid up for many years. Take life easy. Eat, drink, be merry. But God said to him, you fool, this very night your life will be demanded from you. Then who will get what you have prepared for yourself? This is how it will be with whoever stores up things for themselves, but is not rich towards God. Now, I think a lot of times we hear that parable. Maybe you heard it before. Maybe you read that before. I think a lot of times we hear that parable and we think, okay, I'm not supposed to have stuff. I'm not supposed to have stuff. If I have two, if I got to get rid of it. I can't store anything up. I can't have stuff. Can't have a 401k. If I have a checking account, I'm doing something wrong. But I wonder if that's not it. I wonder if Jesus was speaking about another issue that this man had. Not so much about the physical stuff that he was storing, but about the mindset that he carried with him, about the heart that he had. I mean, notice what the guy says. What should I do? I have no place for my crops. What will I do? I'll tear down my barns. This man loves him some him. And here's the problem. We love us some us. If we were being honest, for a lot of us, when we start going to church, when we come to church, the idea is, what is this going to do for me? How is this equipping me? How is this filling me? How is this encouraging me? What is this doing for me? And I wonder if that's not the attitude ultimately we're supposed to have. You see, I think when you look at the 9, that first column, celebrate, connect, contribute, come to church on a Sunday, go to a small group, get on a team. I think people come because they want to know what's in it for them. And honestly, I don't think there's anything wrong with that. When Jesus called the disciples, remember the first thing he said to them? He said, come, I will make you fishers of men. Come, follow me. There's something in it for you. Come, I will make your life better. And I think that's the reason a lot of people go to church. They're hurting, they're lost, they have some kind of hang up, and they want something, so they come to church for something they need. And God starts to pour into their lives. I see it time and time again. God starts to pour into them. But at some point, they get spiritually full. At some point, they get to a place where now it's just, I'm full, and this whole church thing is just not really for me anymore. And then I've seen it time and time again. People say, well, then I'm going to go to another church, because they'll fill me more or better. They have better music or better preaching. Is that even possible? And they'll just say, I'll go somewhere else because because I'm full here and there's nothing really up there for me. Or people will just stop going to church altogether. You know what? I did the church thing. There's nothing there anymore for me. And then I read that parable. And notice the last line of that parable. It says, this is how it will be to whoever stores up things for themselves, but is not rich towards God. Let me ask you this. What does it mean to be rich towards God? You ever thought about that? What does it look like to be rich towards God? You see, as I was reading this parable and as I was thinking about this sermon, I really believe that is the call on each and every one of our lives. Not just for us to be personally filled up, but for us to be rich towards God. To live our lives towards God. And that what we do ultimately matters for God. I don't know if you ever thought about that before. But when we come to church, it's not just about us. It's about God. It's about honoring God. And so that's what I love the illustration of the slinky, because there's this beautiful back and forth motion that you could do. And when we come to church, then we get blessed and our life gets less chaotic and it seems like the drama's a little bit less and we get hope. But then also we honor God and show people who God is and they see God in our life and our life change. And then our life change goes on another step and then God comes back. And really our life is just kind of this back and forth. When you're living rich towards God, then you realize that what you're doing is not just about what you're getting. What you're doing is about honoring God. And then when you honor God, then it opens up a whole new level of blessing that can come through your life and could accidentally spill over into other people's lives. The question is, are you willing to take that turn? Are you willing to take that step Are you willing to grow in your faith, that you will change your mindset about what is filling up my barns, and that you'll say, God, how can I live rich towards you? Because it's a scary step to take. Because it's a step where we have to start saying it's not about me. But when you do that, God does amazing things. And so that's my challenge for you, is in these areas, and celebrating, connecting, contributing. What does it look like for you to take a step where you're living rich towards God, where you're saying it's not about what I get out of it, it's about what I can do for God. Now, some of you, you're not ready for this step. I'll be honest with you. Some of you, you're new to Christ, you're new to the church, you're just checking this thing out. It's fine where you are. It's okay to be where you are, but all of us should be ready to take next steps. All of us should be ready to answer the call. All of us should realize that the goal is not just to sit in a room and say, make me feel better about me. The goal is to go and advance the gospel of God, to glorify God. And when you realize that, then you realize that this whole church thing is so much bigger than just an hour a week. It's so much bigger than just talking about my feelings. It's so much bigger than just writing a check. It's about changing lives, and it's about changing this world. And that never gets boring. That never gets dull. That is an adventure that we trade our lives for. And so many people are missing out because so many people are just get fed up and say, what's in it for me? And they walk away and they never take that next step. And so let me just ask you, in these areas, what does it look like for you to take that next step? And celebrating, worshiping in this room. Have you ever thought about that? Like, what is your next step in that? How do you worshiping, how does your worship style honor God? How does it look? How's it living rich for God? I've seen people, come to church and they're just like, I'll go to church, but I don't sing. I'll listen to sermon, but I don't sing. And people say, like, well, I don't sing because I don't like the song. Or I don't sing because I don't sing good. I don't sing because it doesn't make me feel good about me. What if it's not about you? What if the reason we play these songs is not to entertain? It's not to make you feel happy about yourself. What if the reason we do this is to honor God? And what if what God wants more than anything is to hear his children worship him? Even you, with your off-key, off-tempo, bad voice. I think about my kids. Honestly, I think about my little girls. I would never, like if it was my birthday and they came down and they started singing happy birthday to me, and they're off, I would never, Sabrina, baby, you're off key, baby. Don't, just let Bella finish. You just sit there, okay? No, a father wants to hear their child. What if it's not about you? What if it's about living rich towards God and worshiping him? It changes everything. And really, what it comes down to is this moment where I'm going to stop loving me some me. I'm going to stop living just for me. I'm going to start being rich towards God, and I'm going to allow God to be in control of my life in all aspects. And what we see is it's this beautiful moment of dying to yourself to live for Christ. Dying to myself to live for God, Christ. That whatever happens in church is not about me. Whatever happens in this world is not about me. That I don't have to be first. I don't have to be happy. I don't have to be comfortable. I don't have to even be safe. Because it's not about me. It's about God. And when I live my life this way, it honors God. It changes everything. And like that video, I loved Andrew's video about just that moment. He said, you know what? I fell in love with God a long time ago. I fell in love with God a long time ago, but I needed to say publicly it's not about me. I needed to say publicly that it's not about me getting my barns filled anymore. I want to live rich towards God. And so I'm going to be willing to die to myself, to be raised in Christ, so that I no longer live, but now Christ lives in me. And that is a beautiful, beautiful message. And when people see that, they're convicted, because people see that, they have to make a choice. What am I going to do? That person just said they're living their life for God, and I'm sitting in this room, and I don't know if I can make that same thing, but at least you know where you are now. At least you know what your next step is. Because we have to be willing to say, it's not about me. It's not about filling up my barns. It's about living for God. It changes everything about how we worship. Or how about connecting with each other? I mean, do you realize how important this is? Do you understand how important it is that we be connected, that we be united, that we be trained up? I mean, that's what Jesus prayed for before he left this earth. He says, let them be one. That's what Jesus says, go and make disciples. Because it's important that it's not just about us feeling good, it's about us being equipped to go out. And then how do we equip? That's the question. Then how do you get equipped? And people say, well, I went to church. I go to church. And so I got equipped at church. I sat in a room with 1,000 people and I got equipped. Any school teacher in America will tell you. Any school teacher in America will tell you. The number one hindrance to good education is large classroom sizes. They said if we could just get smaller classroom sizes, if we could get less kids, if we get more one-on-ones, if we get more individual attention to the kids from the teacher, we will have a better education system. Well, then why is it that churches strive for what every public teacher doesn't want? The goal is not to get more and more people in this room, just to get more and more people in here for an hour a week. The goal is to get you into smaller groups, to get you in relationships with each other, to get iron sharpening iron, to get you building into each other's lives, because that's the only way that we're going to be able to equip this many people for the glory of God. That's why as a staff, we said as we get larger and larger, I mean, praise God for that, but we have to get smaller and smaller. That's why we take these life groups so serious. Because if you're not in a group, then the odds of you being trained the way you need to be trained so that when the hardships come, that you can be able to stand, that you'd have the support, that you'd have the people building in your life, the odds of that happening are honestly very rare. And I can sit in the stage and I just see a sea of faces, and I don't know if you're hurting. I don't know if you're struggling. I don't know if your basement is flooding and you need someone to help carry stuff out. But if you were in a small group, if you were in a community, then you would know, and then people could help you and hold you accountable. And then, I'll take it even a step further. What if you were in just even a smaller group? What if there's just one or two other people that you allowed to speak into your life? What if there was one or two people that you allowed to, when you were going to make a major decision, when you're talking about moving, when you're talking about changing jobs, when you're talking about making big decisions, that you allow them to speak into your lives? It would change everything. I mean, Jesus knew that. It's called discipleship. That's what he called his people to do. At 242, we're very serious about that. So serious that we've been talking about this idea of taking next steps, and we talk about this next step website that we have, and this is what we're doing for everybody at 242. You're going to get an email on Monday morning, if your email's in a database, inviting you to our next step resource. Basically what it is, it's 242community.com/next steps. And what that is, it's going to be a resource center for you to be able to have one-on-one Bible studies with someone. Maybe your kids, maybe it's as a family, maybe you want to get together with someone else in your small group and say, hey, would you and I like to go through a study together? And what this is, it's called Right Now Media. And basically it's a website, it's like the Netflix of Bible study curriculum, okay? If your marriage is struggling, maybe you need to get with someone who you trust, who has a marriage who seems strong, and say, could you go through this study with us? If you're dealing with doubt, if you're dealing with addiction, if you're dealing with your finances are out of control, whatever it is, maybe that's the step that you need to take. We're going to make that available for everyone because it's so important that we live rich for God in the way that we encourage, challenge each other. And then this idea of contributing, serving on a team, giving tithes and offerings. You're like, well, Brad, how can that be about filling my barn? How can me being on a team be about filling my barn? I've seen it, though. I've seen people who love to serve, and they love people to see them serving. They love people to see how hard they work at the church and how many days they're there. We do it because we love some us. And what would it look like to serve, not for ourselves, not to write a check to make, so we could, that for ourselves. What if it looked like we did it because we believed in the mission of God, because we believed that what happens to change his life, that we believe that the church is the hope. It changes everything. At some point, we have to stop living for ourselves and we have to start living for God. And the amazing thing is when you do that, then you start to truly see a glimpse of what Jesus talked about. you start to truly see a glimpse of what the church was always meant to be. You start to fully understand the call to die to myself, to live for Christ. More than any other phrase Jesus said in the Bible, he calls us to this calling. He says, whoever seeks his life will lose it, but whoever loses his life for my sake will find it. Jesus said this phrase more than any other phrase, more than love your neighbor, more than love one another. He says, whoever wants to find his life will lose it, but whoever loses his life for my sake will find it. He says this over and over again because the call is to die. The call is to die to yourself. Remember how he said Jesus called the disciples? He says, come and I'll make you fishers of men. Come, I'll do something for you. But in the time that they were with Jesus, in that 3 years that they walked with Jesus, something changed. Something changed in their heart, something changed in their life, something changed in their mind, that they were no longer about what is in this for me. They now understood the call to go. To go and to die to themselves, to live for Christ. And that was far better than how they were living before. And maybe you're here and you're still in this kind of like first column, this kind of come to Christ stage, and you couldn't even fathom putting God first in your finances, God first in your marriage, God first in any area of your life, because you're like, that's scary, because I love me some me. But I'm telling you, it's so much better. I'm telling you, it's so much better, and that is what the church is supposed to be. And when you do that, then the church is alive, and it has a meaning. I just say for myself, from my own experience, there's not much in this world that I would die to myself for. There's not. I mean, I like tacos. I'm not going to die to myself for tacos. I like concerts. I'm not going to die to myself for concerts. I like going to the movie. I'm not going to die to myself to go to movies. But you know what I love? I love my kids. I love my kids. When I come home and I'm tired or I have a headache and I just want to sit down and my daughter comes up to me and says, wrestle, Daddy, wrestle. Then it's not about what I want in that moment. I'll die to myself to wrestle my kid. I love my wife. I love my wife, and when I've had a long day at work and I just want to come home and just be by myself for a little bit, but she's been home with these kids all day and she's like, her steam's coming out of her ears. It's not about me at that moment. It's about dying to myself and giving her that break. I love God. I love God. And I believe that the call of my life is not just to live for myself, but to die for him. And so the way that I drive, the way that I handle my finances, the way that I interact with the other people, the way that I love my enemy, the way that I consider it an honor to die for Christ. And what's amazing about it is when you do that, when you live that way, then the church becomes alive. Guys, every single one of you will get bored of 242. Every single one of you will get bored of 242. But if you truly take that next step, if you die to yourself, you will never get bored of the church because the call is too great, the mission is too powerful. You will never lose focus. You would die to yourself and God will do amazing things. The question is, are you willing to take that step? It's scary. For some of you, it's a leap. But I'm telling you, this is what the church is meant to be. It's a movement that is alive. It's a movement that is changing lives. And it's a movement that's about so much more than just you and your salvation. Yes, that's part of it. But this is a movement about changing the world for the glory of God. And everything that we do honors God and is a part of that. And it's an adventure. So I don't know what your next step is, to get baptized. Maybe take training very seriously. Maybe start reading God's word, allowing someone to study God's word with you. Or maybe just start serving in a way that's just sacrificial. But I believe God's calling all of us to take those next steps, to move, to grow. Because here's the thing, guys. Healthy things grow. And we want to be a healthy church, not just growing in numbers. We need to grow in our heart so that we're living rich towards God. So what does it look like for you to take that next step to live rich towards God? While you're considering that, Jason, our worship leader here, he made a video. When we're talking about this series, when we're talking about this coming up, he was kind of convicted about this, and it's kind of really drew up something in his life, and so he wrote a song that kind of conveys how he kind of feels about his next step and the challenge. And so I just want to share Jason's story and song with you here.
Growing up, I was in church every weekend. My parents got divorced when I was 2 years old, but my grandparents made sure that I was there. They were making an investment in me, in my future, in my spiritual growth. Fast forward a handful of years, and at the end of middle school, and I'm no longer in church anymore. Fast forward another handful of years, and I'm a young adult. I had finished high school, and in high school I had spent all sorts of time on this passion that I had for singing. Every waking moment that I can remember, I spent more time singing and practicing music than I did with anything else in my life. There was definitely something that was lacking, and I didn't know what it was. Move forward into my young adult life, and my wife and I recognized that feeling again. Something was lacking, and we didn't know what it was for the longest time. And one day my wife said, "I think we're missing God." About 10 years after that, I'm sitting here, and all that time that I spent seemingly spinning my wheels, practicing music and singing, doing nothing to glorify Him in it, He is redeeming. He is using that. I got to marry my passions together, my love for music and the giftings that God gave me with this relationship with Him and this love and passion for Jesus. I got to combine these, and I just feel absolutely blessed to be able to do that. So I wrote this song. It's kind of about that journey that we all have an opportunity to be part of with God, and that He's investing in us. He's investing in our spiritual growth, and we need to also invest in that journey as well. It's not much of one if we are never taking next steps. So hopefully this song encourages you.
My life were little more than pages that are ripped and torn, or were filled with nothing but regret. I was baptized and got grace, you see, but never looked too much past me, so I sat back and let myself be fed. I thought I knew all that I'd need to know, and would get wise just by getting old, but now I see the chance that I've got left. If I really want to be alive and do the things that make me right with my Maker, maybe I should spend more time sharing faith with those that seek, and living life for more than me, and helping those that need a guide. ever growing. Now my pages are all filling up with stories of abundant love, and the tears have slowly mended over time. See, my journey's far from over yet, but the choice I made I don't regret, to give my life to Him and not look back. If I really want to be alive and do the things that make me right with my